Good afternoon. I'm J.J. Fletcher. I'm president of Open Horses. We're located in Palisade, Colorado, and we've been a nonprofit for the last 2 years. And I'll give a little more of my story after the introductions.
My name is Duram Buchanan. I'm one of the lead wranglers for JJ at Open Horses. You're Army veteran. Just tell you guys a little bit about what we do after introductions.
My name is Granger. I'm one of the founder and directors of 10th Mountain Equine. We are located northwest of Colorado Springs, and we work with veterans and really most anybody, but we do work a lot with veterans. Originally we were in Eagle, Colorado, and so most of our work actually with the veterans programs are still in Eagle. And Alex, my partner, drives to Eagle depending on the time of year, but in the summer she'll spend a couple of weekends a month in Eagle. My job, I'm more on the administrative side really than the therapeutic side. We are about 6 miles off grid, so I literally keep the lights on. Do my best to keep the lights on. I'm semi-retired. I was a district judge for 27 years. I'm semi-retired, so I still am on the bench some. And we also have a podcast, Off Grid with Horses, where we just kind of discuss what it's like to live at 9,300 feet with horses off grid, the challenges.
Yeah, so a little bit about my background. My family came to western Colorado in the 1880s, so 5th generation. They used the power of the horse to make their way to western Colorado. They used it, the power of the horse for their daily activities, whether it's gathering cattle or just making the rounds. And they ran cattle from Whitewater up to the top of the Grand Mesa. I have pictures of the family where the way they babysit the kids in those days, they had the panniers on a pack horse. The 3-year-old and 4-year-old, my grandmother and my great uncle, they were in the panniers in these pictures, and they were going up the Grand Mesa. And people did what they had to do in those days to survive, make it, and pioneer the West. But for me, we always had horses around our place, and we used them for hunting and other activities. I'm not a rancher. I just love horses. I have a passion for horses. But going forward, in 2013, I had an industrial accident that was nearly fatal, and I fell off a ladder of all things and nearly bled out. I ruptured my spleen. So why am I telling you that? I had to go through a rehabilitative process through another nonprofit here in Mesa County called Harmony Acres, because I had this trauma going on that I was afraid of heights because I fell off a ladder, and I had horses, and I needed help to reestablish myself and get back in the saddle again and become a confident rider again. So through this program, I met the program director at Harmony Acres. Her name is Morgan Carius. She walked me through and helped me through and got me back in the saddle again. And we had conversations about another organization in Montana, out of Bozeman, Montana, called Heroes of Horses. So Micah Fink is the founder of that organization. They broke 64 Mustangs and brought them down from Oregon to use in their program. They actually used a Palisade. I'll think of his name here in a minute. They used one of the talents from Palisade who moved up to Montana to help them break a lot of those horses up there. Their program, they take veterans into the backcountry. They call it not a vacation. They go there for 42 days, 21 days of nutrition, physical activities. They take sweat baths. They take cold baths. They read books. They learn more about themselves. They break into groups of 8, and they finally go and pack into the wilderness. And they go on a 21-day pack trip with 8 guys like a SEAL team. They learn to work together. They're working on their stuff. A lot of them are experiencing PTSD, depression, anxiety, the effects of combat, coming back and just reestablishing life, the trauma. But what we took away from Micah Fink, we actually went to Montana and visited his program. That Micah says the VA administration has failed our veterans. in so many ways. We've spent billions of dollars on government programs that are ineffective, that do not work. And we've got to do better for our veterans, because every day 22 veterans take their lives. And that was when it really hit me that if that's what's going on in our world, then I need to become a part of that to turn that number away from 22, to minimize and stabilize and bring that number down, which we are doing. Micah said, when the world goes one way, we need to make a 180 away from the world. That do something different, because pills and psychologists, psychiatrists, they're that's what they try, but a lot of people don't want that. So the power of the horse is what we have. We have a couple of Mustangs in our program that, well, we had two. One of them passed away 2 weeks ago. We call it our lead horse. But they've been a big part of our program, using the power of the Mustang. And Duram can tell you a little more about his experiences and kind of walk you through how that looks.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of one of the last things you said was, people don't want to go to therapy, take pills, stuff like that. So like I said, I was in the Army for 8 years, moved out to Colorado in 2023. And when you're getting out of the Army, they tell you kind of this, and that, but they don't tell you what you're going to exactly experience. It's different for everybody. And one of the big things is losing kind of like a task and purpose. You're kind of lost for a little bit. And so when I moved out here, got to meet JJ, the Hope and Horses organization, and really, just really enjoyed being around it. At the beginning, it was more for me, using the therapeutic options that were there in front of me. And then after that, what was really nice was being able to be a part of the program with JJ, the other wranglers, because now, there's no way to describe how cool it is to take another veteran or first responder, someone that's been kind of in a similar predicament as me, take them out for a ride. Some of these people have never been on a horse before in their life, but we'll take them out, we'll do our ride, and you get back and you can see the smile, you can see the relief, kind of help them or help everyone understand what it's about. And that's what really means a lot to me in our program.
From my side, I was not military. I was a volunteer firefighter for 15 years. And
Thank you for your service.
thank you. I noticed that when I was on the fire department, when we had a bad call, we would kind of do the tailgate counseling where you sit on the back bumper of a truck and you talk a little bit. But for most of us that have been on for a while, we didn't really want to do that. There is a pretty strong feeling of most of the people that have been on that that's for the newbies that just can't quite handle it. And if I was an EMT lieutenant, if you can't handle a fatal on I-70, then you're in the wrong place. You need to get off the department, because that's what we do.
Right.
And so there were a number of calls that I probably would have benefited from something. Volunteers, I think, have another issue in that if you're on a paid department and your captain says you're going down and you're going to go work with horses, you go down and you go work with horses because that's what you're told you got to do. When you're a volunteer and he says you're going to go down and you're going to do counseling, you can say, I don't think so. That's just not, I just don't have time for that. And the nice thing though with horses, if my chief had said, Russell, that was a really bad call, you should probably go talk to somebody to help you work through all the stuff that you went through and you did and you saw and so forth. I doubt I would have done it. But if he had said, hey Russell, why don't you go down the road to one of the barns down the road and go play with horses for a day, I might have said, that doesn't sound so bad. I'll go play with a horse for the day. So there is an inroad, I believe, with the volunteers because they do the same stuff on the highway. I mean, most of our calls, I was in Georgetown up I-70. So most of our calls were on the highway. You're going 65 miles an hour, something happens. It's usually not pretty. And but that's most of our calls. Some of them were fire, but we would only have 2 or 3 working fires. I don't recall ever having a fatal in a fire, but I can't count the number of fatals that I was on I-7. So the whole horse program is just a good inroad to reach our volunteers and our paid departments that reduces some of the stigma of going to a shrink or a psychologist or whatever. It's just different to go say you're going to go groom a horse for an afternoon.
Yeah, I think what I learned along the way, again, from Micah Fink and going back to things that you can watch his podcast as well and watch his videos, YouTube videos. He always talked about the obstacle is the way, and that goes back to the ancient philosophers, Marcus Aurelius. And Marcus Aurelius said the obstacle is the way. And as we encounter obstacles, we have to figure out that life gets better once we get through that obstacle. That, when we put this program together, we had to go out and make decisions and go find the horses that were fit for our program. I had, took trips to Phoenix, Arizona to pick up horses from another trail riding program and picked up one of the Mustangs, Nova. But, a lot of people who go through therapy as well, they always say hardship is the pathway to peace. And, by going through different obstacles, and a lot of us have worked together at Open Horses, we've had, obstacles that we've had to face. But, it strengthens the team, it strengthens the individuals. It gives us that grit that we can work through things in our lives. That we have 30-some volunteers that benefit as well from shoveling manure. And I saw you out there last night, and I was on a rake a couple of days ago.
Yeah,
And
I just finished my cow and I had to hurry up over here. So.
It's part of it, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you're going through the process of saddling your horses and grooming your horses and doing the vet and doctoring horses and everything that you do, it would be so easy to say, well, at the end of the day, man, I'm going to go on vacation, have a real vacation,
Right.
But it really, again, hardship builds that character that you need to survive in this world. And going back to this spring, we had 21 veterans and first responders because we incorporated first responders into our program. We take them out on those 2-hour trail rides. We ride through the majestic peach orchards and Palisade into the sagebrush country up Horse Mountain. What a name. And it's just such a peaceful environment. It's quiet. We don't have the Mustangs on our range. They're crossover on the Book Coast side. We don't encounter much wildlife out there, but it's just a serene, peaceful 360 view. Like I say, the nuts and bolts of the program, the horses, the people, the tools, putting everything together from your farrier to your veterinarian. It takes a village of people to put programs together. Things like your website, all of it. None of us are paid staff at Open Horses. Even our webmaster, she volunteers her time. We need that social media so that we can contact people in the community and people who, come in. I imagine you probably found us on social media.
Right there.
You can go onto our website, openhorses.org or .com. We have it. It'll work either way. People can sign up to volunteer, or they can sign up for the trail ride, or they can, if they have some experience, we'll work with them to become a wrangler, like what Duram's done, and that's kind of a little more about it, the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, I was thinking about, trying to get the word about how horses are therapeutic. And one of the things that I've kind of pondered on and come to believe is, coming from a military background, trust becomes a big part of your life. You learn to trust your buddies to the left and right, your teammates, your squads. Trust becomes very important. And one thing that was really beneficial to me with this program is, you have a sense of trust with you and your horse. You need your horse to trust you. and you want to trust your horse. That's, you know, basic horsemanship. And so it's just a good opportunity to kind of get you out there, you know, after you're going to after you do your transition. You never know what you're going to encounter. Maybe you don't want to be around people, you know, you want to kind of hold up, or you don't want to go to therapy, do the pills, whatever that, you know, looks like. But you can go trust that horse and create that bond. I think everyone creates a bond after they take them out, you know, that whether they've ridden before or not, that 2-hour trail ride they'll get done, and that, you know, that's their horse, you know. They may never see him again, but they have that 2 hours of trust, and those are always the best rides, I think. You know, you get done, that trust was on both ends, and, you know, makes for just a great outcome at the end.
How many horses do you all have in the program?
We have 5 or 6. You know, we have horses that are very seasoned, right? So we don't have a lot of younger horses. We have horses that are very seasoned with age, and, you know, we've lost a couple this past year. But, you know, we have to rebuild at times, and we're in that rebuilding phase right now with trying to find some, you know, hopefully maybe the outcome through this event, maybe we'll find another Mustang or two that could integrate into our program.
We have, in 10th Mountain, we have always had a Belgian that we've worked with military, and unfortunately our Belgian, we've had roughly it's been a bad year, I think, for a lot of people. We lost our Belgian about a week and a half ago, and he was good with people, military or firefighters, because he was 19 hands, weighed about 2,000 pounds, and he just wasn't a pony, you know, for that whole, you know, somebody says, well, I don't want to go work with a little horse. Well, you know, go work with this guy, and he was gentle and sweet, and now we have a number of Mustangs. We have 3 ponies that we do use, actually use them quite a bit for a particular therapeutic type of session. And I don't know if you are doing this, but we are starting to work even more with the horses, might say counseling for the horses, because the horses absorb a lot of rough energy, yeah. They absorb a lot of that, and if you work with horses very long, you'll recognize they're very emotional, empathetic creatures. They're not I know for many, many years ranchers saw a horse as a tool, and that's it. But they're pretty amazing creatures. They empathize, they can sense what a person's going through, and they absorb a lot of that. So we're doing more and more work with our horses, especially after a session, to try and we release that, try and release that emotion, try and work with the emotions that the horse absorbs so they don't get trapped. That can actually mess up a horse physically down the road. It's just something, the direction that we're working on.
How do you do that?
There's the technique that we're using, 2 techniques. One is visual, and you visualize light around the horse, and envision the light moving through the horse. And I know that sounds odd, but it's effective. You get lick and chew through that, and so it works. The other way, emotions are energy, and whether it's in a person or a horse, this technique is more common with people. I use it with horses, but an emotion is energy, and that energy can get lodged in a human or in a horse. And we work with the horse through testing, through muscle testing, to try and locate where that energy is, and then we release that energy with a magnet. And it's interesting the way it works. Is when I first started doing it, I thought, this is the weirdest, craziest thing I've ever heard. And you can, it doesn't happen all the time where you can get this result, but sometimes the horse you can tell the horse felt something. you know, they sometimes they'll even spook. When you release it, they'll feel that release and they don't understand what just happened. And they'll freak out a little bit, then they calm down. We had Solomon, the great big Belgian, was working with him 3-4 weeks ago, and he got a big release. He freaked out and he ran around a little bit. Then he calmed down again, and we worked with him, you know, some more. But that's also effective with people because people get emotions. Yeah, they get bound up and trapped in them, and it's when you talk about it initially, it sounds strange, but when you think of it, an emotion is nothing but energy, and you can get energy trapped anywhere, and so that releases that. And you can use the horse also when you're working with an individual to release that emotion as well.
Russell, how did it feel when you rode horses? I mean, all three of you, you've had trauma, horses have helped you. How did you feel when you were riding? I mean, did you feel like peaceful or like things were draining out of you, you know, your anxiety or whatever?
Initially for me, I haven't been in horses in my whole life. My mother was allergic to them, so I wasn't around them much. And just started to get around them, kind of doing dude ranches and stuff like that, and ended up getting more involved with them, and wanted to get one. My wife said, "Don't buy a horse, don't buy a horse, don't buy a horse," so I bought two.
Good for you.
And we're divorced now. But I noticed that when I would go out and play with my horse and groom her, try to get used to her a little bit, learn how to train her and so forth, I just felt better. I just was in a better mood, just felt better. And that's how I started to get in. Working with them, I met Alex, who's on the therapeutic side. She started talking to me about, well, of course you do. This is how this works. This is what happens when you talk to, you know, when you work with a horse. And then from there, that we ended up founding the 501c3.
JJ, what about you?
Yeah, I want to go back to the day of the last ride I had on Boots, which was 2 weeks ago. And when I came back to the corral, were you on that ride? It was Heather, the lady from, so I think it was Carissa and Heather and myself. And we were making our way back to the ranch, to the corral. And Boots, the Mustang, it was spelled B-U-T-Z. And he was our lead horse, just a phenomenal horse. Trust. Everybody that rode him, you know, the Wranglers, just had amazing experiences with this horse. And when I got off of him, I almost wanted to make a couple more circles, but it was time to, you know, dismount, unsaddle the horses, and call it a day. But when I got off of him that day, it was like, that was the best ride ever. I can't wait to go again next week. I didn't have a next week. I went to the corral at 5 p.m. after work, and he had colicked, and one of the things I'm having to learn through this experience is that I'm a problem solver, and I wanted to solve that problem. I took him to 2 vets. I took him to Glenwood, to the surgical center. I wanted to die, and so now we have to go through that obstacle of finding a replacement horse. But to your point, I mean, it was a connection that was bittersweet. I mean, you know, he went on to higher pastures. I don't know, as you know, he was a very loving, kind, gentle horse. He's a Mustang, and off of his brand, he was from the Book Cliff herd in Utah. BLM, he was 20 years old. Again, I wanted to play God, and I can't do that.
Did you feel he gave you all he had left on the ride?
Oh yeah.
So for me, every ride's different.
Yeah.
I've had the rides like JJ's talking about where you know, either you're going or once you get back and you dismount, you just feel your soul is lighter. And those are great rides. Or even going back, like I said, taking veterans and first responders out, having that positive impact, like that can make a ride for me right there. But every time you step in a saddle, you're doing a job. And so at the end of the day, whether I had a good day, bad ride, bad ride, it gave me that task and purpose again. It doesn't matter. Every time you sit in a saddle, it's a chance to make your horse better, make yourself better. And so even, you know, if something happened or something was going not the way you wanted it to, I still had a task at the end of the day and I still got to complete that task. And sometimes that's all I need, you know.
It's a military and first responder thing, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Routine that task, that
Yeah.
purpose. So,
It's gotta be tough because you know, I mean, it's not like retiring. I mean, you are retiring from the military, right? But all of a sudden, you have these people telling you what to do and when to do it and what time to do it, whatever. And then all of a sudden, it's like nothing.
It is, yeah, going from completely structured
Wow.
to,
yeah,
you know,
structure,
nothing.
trying to figure it out.
So, and that's the big thing that they'll tell you is, you know, keep your mind busy. And that's like, anytime I'm in a saddle, there's always something you can do better. There's always something you can work on with your horse. And so, yeah, there's different levels to it. But like you were saying, there's tasks associated with it, you know.
We will do we have a methodology. We call it a trauma releasement therapy. And I've been on both sides of this as the person leading therapy and also the person receiving the therapy. It's very straightforward and basic. And we will do, if you're familiar with the psychological test called PANIS test, where basically all it is we use a numbering system between 1 and 10. And you ask the person, so do you have something that's bothering you that, you know, just something that you think about a lot, it's just something bugging you. And then rate that, you don't have to say what it is, but just rate it between 1 and 10. 10 means you can't sleep at night, it's keeping you up. It's just always on your mind, you just can't get away from it. And a 1 is just not really a significant, but you think of it from time to time. And we usually have somebody that, with a group, will have a number from, usually they get some 7s and some 8s, a few times we'll get a 9, and sometimes a 10. And all they do is they put their hand on the back of the horse, they bend over, take a breath, bend over, hold it for a few minutes, and then stand up and keep the hand on the back of the horse. And then they'll do it the same thing on the other side with the other hand. It's very, very simple. And we've had amazing success with that. Going from a 10 down to a 5 in 45 seconds. And we'll ask later, because it's important, this is one thing that's with just equine therapy, you have an immediate effect, but it lasts. It's not like a med that after 2 hours, it goes away.
Yeah.
This will last for a long time, or forever. And so we've had just amazing success with that, where the horse is just absorbing just a lot of negative energy. That's why we're trying to work more and more with the horses, because they're just absorbing a lot of negative energy and helping the person. And if you want me, I can introduce you to Alex. She can explain how to do that. She developed it. I don't know how she came up with it, probably just by accident. But it works. And it's just illustrative of horses and what I think of are just magical. They're just wonderful creatures, and their ability to help us, to absorb that negative energy and to help us.
What time were we supposed to go to?
Any time we
Yeah.
you say we can.
Quick question for your program, how often do you guys ride?
We try to ride, weekly to keep our horses going. It's been pretty hot, but we have the fall season coming up with the veterans, and we'll start regrouping for the fall season. But we had one of our guys today that was out on a But the organized, scheduled trail rides are in the spring and the fall when we
Gotcha.
generally, so the rest of it's just kind of the training time.
Is it easy to sign up for it on the website?
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty easy. You just go to the hopeandhorses.org, sign up, like I say, for either volunteering, sign up for a trail ride or stall support. I think that was it. And of course, you can always, there's a donation button as well, right? Because it takes money to feed them.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? Comments? All right. Well, thank you very much.
It's very interesting.
Thank you.